building, Dr. Anthony Montero.
How are you doing, Professor?
Doing well. Because even Du Bois had trouble with his relationships, right? So it's not anybody I'm talking about. Even the great Du Bois had his challenges. So we got to deal with it.
It's life. It's existential.
Life. So it's a work in progress. We all guilty, but we're going to work on it together.
Well, last week we said we were going to do 3 weeks where we would get into Du Bois's concept of the truth.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And truth as the foundation. So last week we read this speech that he gave at Fisk University in 1908, where he talked about the scientist Galileo and how he sold out at the end of his life. And, I guess one of the things I like to say is that, Du Bois graduated from Fisk University, one of the early historically black colleges and university in Nashville, Tennessee. And he always privileged his education at Fisk over Harvard and the University of Berlin. And he returned to Fisk to give a speech, a commencement speech in 1898, 10 years after he graduated.
Okay.
Then he came back in 1908, 20 years afterwards. And then he came back in 1924 when his daughter graduated from there. And then again in 1938, the 50th anniversary of his graduation from Fisk.
And he spoke each time?
Each time at commencement. And each time his topic had something to do with the truth and the role of historically black colleges in educating the future generations to be courageous. Now, today I'm going to read from a speech that he gave at Johnson C. Smith College. Today it's Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he gives this speech at the end of March in 1960. And it has a very interesting title, Whither, Now, and Why? And he's asking the question, after we African Americans gain our civil rights and get the right to vote, then what comes next? What do we want?
Good question.
What are our goals? Do we want to assimilate into American culture and society where we lose our own culture, our own literature, our own identity?
And businesses.
That's right, and our own relationships to the world? Or do we want to remain, as he said we were, a world within a world, with civil rights, with voting rights, but nonetheless, a world within a world, as he called us on another occasion, a nation within a nation?
Yes.
Or, as he said early on in his career, a civilization in potentiality. He said this in 1897. Perhaps we have evolved into a civilization in actuality. So he asked the question, whither, now, and why? And he says if we are to go forward, there are two things that we have to have that keep very strong.
What's that?
The family and historically black colleges and universities.
See, we was on to something.
The family and the historically black colleges and universities. And
that's big.
And so he was talking about preserving the souls of black folk, the identity of black folk, and the struggle of black folk.
Wow.
So I just want to begin at kind of the middle of this speech, and then we'll analyze it.
All right.
And Du Bois says, the great American world of which we have for centuries been striving to become a part, and which has arisen to be one of the most powerful nations, is today losing its influence, and that American Negroes do not realize. There was a time when as leader of a new democracy, as believers in new tolerance and religion, and as a people basing their life on equality of opportunity in the ownership of land and property, the United States of America stood first in the hopes of mankind. That day has passed. I took a trip recently that lasted nearly a year. I had already traveled widely. I'd been to Europe 15 times. I'd been to Asia. I'd been to Africa. I'd circled the world. Then for 9 years, I was imprisoned in the confines of the United States by the unauthorized dictum of those who were ruling this country. From 1950 until 1958, I was not allowed to travel abroad. The reason was that I had cooperated with millions of men who wanted war to cease. Even here, my actions had been simply to tell Americans what was being done by other countries to promote peace. For this, I was accused of being an agent of a foreign government, just for making peace, and ordered to admit this or go to jail. It cost me over $30,000 to defend myself in court against this absurd accusation. This sum I and my wife had to beg from state to state. The courts threw the case out for lack of proof. Despite this, I was refused a passport for travel abroad until the Supreme Court finally decided that the Department of State had no legal grounds to refuse me a passport. Paul Robeson, who for 10 years had been deprived of a livelihood for equally baseless reasons. Myself and others were given passports. I and my wife went abroad to Great Britain and Holland, to France and Czechoslovakia, to Sweden and Germany, to the Soviet Union, and to the Chinese Republic. It was the most astonishing trip I've ever had. It radically changed my whole point of view. I saw first that America and its actions since the First World War was thoroughly condemned by the civilized world, that no other country was so disliked and hated. The British and the Dutch, while restraining their expressions of dislike behind good manners and for fear of our wealth and power, nevertheless did not like America or Americans. That the French could hardly mention Americans without calling them dirty. That the people of Czechoslovakia and Germany blamed America for the cruelties which they suffered and for the difficulties which they were facing. That the 200 million people of the Soviet Union regard Americans as their greatest threat, and the 680 millions of China hate America with perfect hatred for treating them as subhuman. Then he continues, I spent 13 weeks in China. I was treated with a courtesy I had met nowhere else in the world, and I was convinced that here was a colored people who in happiness and knowledge would outstrip the world before the dawn of the next century. The work of China today is a miracle of success. What we Americans want is freedom to know the truth, and the right to think and to act as seems wiser to us under the democratic process. And what we have to remember is that in the United States, democracy has almost disappeared. There is no use deceiving ourselves in this respect. If all this is true, it must be taught to our youth. It must be taught by teachers and instructors and professors. And in that case, we must face the fact that these teachers may lose their jobs. They can only be supported and employed if the bulk of American Negroes support institutions like the private Negro College. If the Negro or white colleges are going to depend on the gifts of the rich for support, they cannot teach the truth. If they are supported tomorrow, Negroes must give not a tenth, but a quarter of their income to support education and social organization, and teachers must sacrifice to the last penny. This impoverishment of the truth seekers can only be avoided by eventually making the state bear the burden of education, and this is socialism. We must then vote for socialism. We began this in the New Deal, and then we were stopped. But in Europe and Asia, and also in Africa, socialism and communism are spreading. Socialism will grow in the United States if we restore the democracy of which we have boasted so long and done so little. Here is where Negroes may and must lead.
Wow. And you know that part about giving 25% of their earnings to the cause
of education.
Yeah, that definitely sparked interest for me, because I'll be on these airwaves talking about, can y'all at least get a WURD membership?
Yeah.
You know, some of them call so much, we should give them a bill at the end of the month for the minutes used. Yeah, that's serious, though. We need to make sacrifices.
And you know, the thing that's so profound about what Du Bois is saying here, and this is 1960, it's a year and a half before he leaves the country to go and live in Ghana, and almost 3 years, a little over 3 years before he passes away in Ghana. But what he says, after this long life, what I have concluded, that it is the education of black people that can make the difference.
Wow.
But that education must be grounded in the striving to know the truth. Let me just add one more thing, Professor Smith.
No rush.
He gives this speech at the height of the Cold War, and that period we know as McCarthyism, where he and Paul Robeson and many others were deprived of the right to make a living, deprived of the right to travel, deprived of many democratic rights because they disagreed with the government. In the case of Du Bois and Paul Robeson, there were two questions. Nuclear war, which they disagreed with the Eisenhower and Truman administrations, and eventually the Kennedy administration on nuclear buildup. And the other thing was Pan-Africanism. Those two issues they would not retreat on. And while many who had jobs and who were celebrated would not speak out on these questions, they did. And they said that the black colleges and the black schools must teach peace, they must teach Pan-Africanism, they must teach internationalism, and they must do it fearlessly even if they lose their jobs.
And here in 2018, we got the closing and the threat of closing of numerous HBCUs.
Oh yes. And the closing of public schools.
Yeah, so we got to get on point.
Not just HBCUs, but public schools.
And primarily those Pan-African, Afrocentric public schools are disproportionately, especially in this area, impacted. So we definitely need to continue this conversation. Dr. Anthony Montero, reading from the Educating of Black People.
I'm reading from the speech, Whither, Now, and Why.
So they can find it even online,
yes.
Right? And we have Queen Quasa, super producer in the building, JB, the young phenom. We are going to continue and get to the phone lines, Brother Timothy and others. Gary, if you want to call back, and everybody wants to talk to the good doctor, now is your chance. Thank you for waking up with word, y'all.
The 8th annual Summer of Freedom Tour is coming to a neighborhood library near you. Don't miss this opportunity to experience Word Radio up close and personal as Steph Renee from The Source broadcasts live from various free library locations all summer long. Join us Wednesday, July 25th at the King Sessing branch, located at 1201 South 51st Street, and Friday, July 27th at the Charles Durham branch. Stop by for exciting giveaways, activities, conversation, and fun. The 8th annual Summer of Freedom Tour is brought to you by Comcast Internet Essentials and Cigna Health Spring in partnership with the Free Library of Philadelphia, PICO, Moravia Health, Wells Fargo, and Aetna. For more information, visit wordradio.com.
Man, do I love card night. You ready, boys? You got a king?
Go, bitch, Dad.
Oh, come on. This is WWE superstar Titus O'Neil. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Children have the right to enjoy a safe and peaceful summer. Let's talk to each other instead of reaching for guns. So a simple argument won't end up in tragedy with another child taken from us. Sheriff Jewel Williams will be out spreading the word this summer. Let's talk it out. Don't shoot it out. The sheriff's office will give away free gun locks to anyone who will take a gun safety pledge and promise to try and talk it out. Don't shoot it out. If you see him, take the pledge. We'll put your photo on the sheriff's office Facebook page. So join the Summer of Peace posse. Get a free gun lock and take the pledge. Let's talk it out. Don't shoot it out.
You're listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Independent Black Media.
Independent Black Media, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD, WURDradio.com. Listen live anytime and log on. If you don't have that app, you know where to go download an app. Like you know, in the building, chillin', Aaron Smith, the rapping professor, Queen Quasa, super producer, and the young phenom JB, talking with Dr. Montero, Dr. Anthony Montero. I'll give everybody two names, so those are your two. No, but we're talking about the Year of Du Bois and the importance of investing in education and the importance of this,
the truth.
Yeah,
of the truth. And education and the truth are intertwined in his thinking.
And it must be.
It must be.
Some people think that the education itself is fine, but it depends on what you're learning.
But this is this question goes back to an earlier debate he had in the beginning of the 20th century with Booker T. Washington. The question of manual and technical education versus what was then called a liberal, a broad education. And so, what Du Bois argued is that this emphasis upon technical and manual education, although it's important, but at the expense of a broader education. Even those people doing vocational education need to be broadly educated as well.
No, I agree. Shout out to all the elders at Herbert E. Millen. They were teaching me about the importance of liberal arts education, and it helps to do something to your mind, basically. Not just to be a machine or have a skill, even if it's lucrative, but to really make somebody a more complete person. We're going to go to the phone lines and talk about Du Bois when y'all call up. Now we're talking about Du Bois. Don't call up talking about some other stuff. Brother Timothy from South Philly. I know you're always on point. Thank you for waking up with word. Good Brother Timothy.
Hey, Rabbi Professor, I'm trying to be Dr. Smith. I'm trying. Dr. Montero, how are you?
Fine, Timothy.
Let me tell you something, Dr. Montero. As a Kappa from Lincoln University, started very early, I learned to travel. We would travel to Cheney. We would travel to Bell State, called the Bloody Triangle Howard University.
Right. Blood Triangle.
Exactly. And you would be fascinated, Dr. Smith, because it was the new chapter for you in Kwame Nkrumah and Nama.
Yes, sir. You better talk that talk now this morning.
That's right. All single letters, because it was agenda schools all male at one time. Now the sisters are up there, and of course there's double letter chapters. It's all good. My thing is that if I had a chance to visit almost every HBCU in the country, I would do it because they're either underground railroad, somebody famous graduated from there who produced and helped us in our struggles. And I'm going to say this, that I'm proud to be a Lincoln University graduate. The jazz musicians that graduated from the HBCUs and their contributions. But Montero has to book with the book, The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual by Harold Cruz. As you and I go back and forth with the technical education and the classical education and putting them together. But Montero, schools, hospitals, and businesses, Du Bois, Elijah Muhammad understood that framework, and we should never get away from that. Putting back in our own communities, institutions, man, institution building, and that's what they were. They were builders, and we don't have that today like we should.
Yeah. But I think Du Bois stood out in one regard, that he put the educator and the teacher at the pinnacle of black leadership. Because he put education as the most important task of black folk, of an oppressed people generally. So it's a very interesting equation that he develops.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, Dr. Montero. But if we look at that, Washington's a machine, because remember now, it was Marcus Garvey who was looking for Booker T. And from that machine, you get Booker T, you get Elijah Muhammad, and it goes on further, and that machine is still in place. But at the same time, remember now, Dr. Montero, we could coexist with white racism with it together. It would work. You have to look at it. We could talk deeply on this. Maybe coffee one Saturday, if necessary.
All right. Well, thank you, Brother Timothy, for calling up. And we also have Madeline from Overbrook on the line. Thank you for calling, Madeline.
Thank you so much for taking my call, Professor. Tony Montero.
Hi, Madeline.
How are you?
Fine. Long time.
It has been. And listen, darling, I've been telling the girls in the book club, and you know this book club been together 35 plus years.
Wow.
We don't want to go too far because some people like the age not to be what it is. You know how that goes. But anyway, we talked about you. We talked about your mom. And I was telling them what you've been doing on this word thing. Everybody needs to be listening because it is absolutely marvelous, darling.
Thank you very much.
And we want you to come to our club and we can get you. My phone number is the same. That's that old 473-5259. I don't care who knows it. Everybody in Philadelphia probably know it by now who need or want to know it. If you give me a ring and we can put together a date when you can come to our book club.
I would love it. I would love to do that.
And we would love to have you. And Professor, We thank you for keeping this going, because we learned so much more. And then every day you got another book or two in there.
Try my best.
Wait a minute, I got to read Black Men too now. At 85, I don't need to start nothing new. But I guess I'm going to have to. I'm enjoying it all. God bless you all.
Well, thank you for calling in, Madeline.
Thank you, Madeline.
So, in this contemporary context, how do those who are interested in maintaining the legacy of Du Bois and feel similarly, even if, like Brother Timothy said, their prioritization might be different with which institutions to put at the top, if they have a similar sentiment with regards to the overall goal, institution building and the preservation of this truth, what can people do today to reinvigorate or take up that mantle and make sure that while we, like we told earlier, there's schools that are closing, was it Morris College or Morris Brown?
Morris Brown.
So there's schools who are having issues financially, and there's all these black people with millions of dollars. What can we do to revitalize these efforts that Du Bois said was so critically important?
Well, Professor Smith, this is Du Bois' 150th birthday, and, we decided that we would celebrate it. Now, we don't have money, we don't have political power, so we could only do it on a modest and grassroots basis. And thanks to WURD, we've been able to read Du Bois, to acquaint and reacquaint people with Du Bois. And this is huge, because one of the things that is missing in the equation of liberation of our people here in the United States is education. Our people are being poorly educated and uneducated, and I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that we seem to be going backward in terms of knowledge, in terms of consciousness. And knowledge and consciousness produces empathy, a sense of the need for solidarity. Uneducated people who are confused about the world in which they live, see everybody as a potential enemy. They retreat into themselves. But a person who is educated, and I'm not talking about a lot of college degrees or whatever. I mean, we have more professors and more PhDs than ever, but I would argue we're less educated, including the college professors and PhDs.
No, even Du Bois talked about that himself.
That's right, absolutely. And I think that education, the proper type of education and community education and things like we're doing here, produces courage. And we need courage. I heard you talking about it earlier. We need courage, resolve, principled character, moral, a sense of the moral imperative, the moral necessity. Yeah, these are the things that we need. And when our institutions, be it the church, be it our colleges, are weakened, you see the character of black people, the souls of black people weaken. So if you were to ask me, what do we have to do? We need a massive grassroots education movement in the black community. What that's going to look like completely, I can't say. But the churches need to become centers of education on days that, you don't have church services.
You should have Saturday schools from everywhere.
Saturday free schools. That's what we tried to do for the last 7 years. And I would say this, and I'm end on this, we should not expect spectacular results.
Like right away, right?
Right away. Do what you can do and do it.
Cast down your buckets where you are.
That's right. And do it with principle. Do it honestly. Do it in good faith. Do it not with the expectation that you're going to get something, but somebody will be served.
That's right. Anthony Montero, the good doctor, Dr. Anthony Montero, bringing us that Du Bois, that legacy, that energy, that courage, and that imperative to make sure that we fight for truth and respect and honor the important legacy of the historically black colleges and universities. So you've been given marching orders. People always call up and say that. What are our marching orders? You've been given marching orders today on a lot of different levels, and he closed out with some very direct, pragmatic marching orders. Where you are, do what you can, and make sure that education and truth is in the center of it.
As you know, and I think Du Bois is paramount in this. I think to know Du Bois is to know history, to know sociology, to know cultural studies, to know philosophy. But, also, I think James Baldwin is a huge figure in the existential phenomenological, by which I mean the psychological and interpersonal relationships between and among black folk.
And that's what we're going to pick up from when I get back. Because I promise y'all, I'm going to work on this relationship piece. Because if we can't get along with each other, all these degrees and even these businesses and big words, if we don't trust each other and respect each other to do the business, setting it up ain't going to be enough. And if we don't believe in each other to hire each other and to procreate with each other, let's just make it all the way plain, since I've been doing it all day. Yeah, we gotta get our relationships in order. We thank Dr. Anthony Montero for joining us today. Thank Queen Kawais, the super producer, put some respect on her name. Thank JB, the young phenom, for working the board. We even thank all the sensitive brothers for calling in today. Y'all got a place too. Y'all inspire me to do this whole relationship piece. I said we got more work to do. See, if y'all didn't call in, I might not have these brothers and sisters, getting on the mic in the next few weeks, and matching people up. Maybe one day somebody will be like, hey, I owe my birth to your show. You say to Teddy Pendergrass, let me stop. I am Aaron Smith, the Rabbit Professor. Thank y'all and love y'all. Who's up next? The Source. Summer of Freedom. Make sure you keep it locked, y'all. Huh? Is that what I said? So, I just got extra excited. Summer of Freedom, The Source. Up next, Stephanie Renee. I got to put respect on everybody's name. I give everybody two names. My apologies. Stephanie Renee. Steph Renee, you are a stalwart and you are an institution amongst, a walking institution. Going to these various institutions, trying to institute some change in the community in a positive way. Stress education. Libraries never been cooler. That's what's up. Summer of Freedom, y'all. Up next, The Source. Thank you for waking up with WURD, y'all.
You know that girl that sells seashells by the seashore? She is steamy, sweltering, and super thirsty. So she seeks sweet sips of satisfaction to soothe her thirsty soul. Simple solution? The splendid savings on McCafe drinks at McDonald's. Every small smoothie, frappe, shaker, iced mocha, and for a limited time, the new cold brew. Just $2 each. It's an icy sweet paradise of savings all summer long at McDonald's. At participating McDonald's, cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
You will never know the pain you cause when you pick up a gun.
The pain is deep.
Are you listening? Put it down. Is it really worth your entire life?
Just put it down.
The pain I felt when I lost my brother,
my friend,
my cousin, was unbearable.
Is it that serious?
Just put it down.
I guess the tears that fall from my eyes doesn't mean a thing to you, right? Put it down.
Do you know what it's like to close a casket on your child? Put it down.
Oh, I guess a social media beef is worth taking someone's life. Put it down.
The hurt and the pain will never go away.
Has neighborhood violence affected you or someone you know? Join us on Thursday, July 26th from 2 to 7 p.m. at Bartram's Garden for a special Word on Violence two-part event. Details at wordradio.com or call 215-425-7875.
We parents hear our kids say lots of things that can get us pretty worked up. Things like,
"Look, Mom, no hands."
And,
"Ouch, that hurts."
Look, you'll never completely stop worrying about your kids. But you can breathe a little easier with free or low-cost health insurance through Medicaid and CHIP programs in your state. The truth is, they're covering more kids and teens than ever before. So even if you've applied in the past, even if you don't qualify, your kids can now be eligible for regular doctor and dentist visits, prescriptions, and more. So the next time you hear,
"Oh, I don't feel so good,"
relax. Your kids can be covered.
Get us kids covered today. Families of 4 earning up to $49,200 a year or more may qualify. Just go to insurekidsnow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. That's 1-877-543-7669. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
So
us how you really feel. Follow us on social media at On Word. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM WURD and 900 AM WURD, Philadelphia, the Black Talk Media. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, listeners, and hosts of any program on Word Radio do not necessarily reflect those of ownership, management, or advertisers of this station.
You're listening to The Source, an eclectic arrangement of diverse, powerful voices tackling the issues that affect us all. Today's edition is hosted by Steph Renee, so let's get started with The Source.